Hello everyone and welcome to our little craft event. Make sure that you type in the comments where you're from. We love to see if you're a newbie, if this is your first time with us on our monthly live events here on YouTube, or if you come every time and you know the game. So Emily, tell them where to ask their questions if they have questions.
Yes, if you're joining us on YouTube, go ahead and follow the Vimeo link in the comments below, in the information below. And then if you have any questions about this project as we're moving along, go ahead and click the Ask button so that I can make sure to see it, and we'll get that answered for you.
There we go. That way you can have your questions answered in real time. And of course you can make comments over on the YouTube channel even after for the replay, and we'll pop in at some point and answer those for you as well. Right? All right, well, here we are. It is time to make a succulent, and I have to say we're actually hitting our 10-year anniversary next month. And I was thinking about, what projects I want to do on this channel and give out for newbies especially. And I remember that the succulent is probably one of my all-time favorite projects. And this wreath I made, I would say, about 9 years ago. I made this wreath probably one of my first projects when I got my Cricut, and it's all out of cardstock, and it still is beautiful. And we have it displayed in our studio here. There's a few that fell off. I probably need to make some new ones, but other than the glue not holding, it's held up really well. It's my all-time favorite, I would say, plant, easy 15-minute craft to make. And what I wanted to do today, even though we have so many different versions of succulents on our site, we have, crepe paper and frosted, and we have kits. I wanted to show you a version that you could make out of something that you have in your cupboard, I'm sure you do, and that is a grocery bag. And if you've watched my channel back in the day, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, you might remember these. These are two little baskets that I made from grocery bags, and they're probably, again, one of my favorite projects. I made one that's a little Easter basket, and this is some crepe paper filler that we added for photo shoot this last week. So you can see how I do love the grocery bags. And one of the things I really love about this paper is because it's made to be holding groceries, it's actually really strong. So it is perfect to make a beautiful little succulent. And I'm going to show you how to make 3 of them today. So if you haven't downloaded, I have the templates in different ways. We have an SVG template. We also have a printable template, and I set it up so that if you wanted to print it right onto your paper, your cardstock, or your, I don't know if I would run this through the printer, but I'm guessing some printers it would work. But you can print it right onto your paper, or you can cut it out and use that as a template if you're cutting by hand. Any questions over there? Nope. Okay, I'm just rolling along here. Okay, so, and then the other is the SVG cut file, and I did cut mine with a cutting machine. You can see I cut out a piece, and one of the tips that I will suggest, because I made the mistake, and that is make sure you press this paper down really well onto your mat, because it does, since it's not so flat, it did bubble up on me and I got a little tear, so I just wanted to point that out. All right. Yes.
What's that thing?
Oh, the brayer. Yes. We have a little role playing over here, a little. Anyway, so yeah, the brayer is one of my favorite tools, and I use the Cricut brayer to press that onto my Cricut mat. Or I should have. Afterwards, I thought, oh, that would have been a good tip. So I'm giving the tip to you guys. Okay, the second tip that I wanted to suggest is before you start adding color to your pieces, which we're going to do here in a minute, take a piece of your, scrap and go ahead and play with the colors and see what happens. I have some Posca markers here. I tried some pan pastel. I'm using my water-based markers. You can try your alcohol-based markers as well and just see what happens. And one of the things I did notice is when I use my marker, it looks a bit different when I first lay it down, and then it changes when it dries. And I have to say that I chose colors that were pretty bright. I mean, this is a really tangy yellow. You can see it here, it's almost neon. But when you put that on to this brown paper, it really shifts color. It adds that earthiness. So if you're picking colors, I would say pick some pretty bright ones. This one's actually just darker, so this one's not a real bright color. All right. All right. So let's go over all of our tools and materials next. I just wanted to throw those couple little tips out. So I do have my paper bag and I've already cut out my pieces. I have some different colors I'm going to show you. I have a color pencil, some markers. I'm going to show you a pan pastel version with my little brush here. I do like to have my needle nose tweezers, and you'll see why in a second. I am only using this art glitter glue. You could use white glue or you can use hot glue, but I found this works really well. I'll be using my curling tool. Then, you know, I have a pair of scissors on hand, even though I've already cut my paper, just in case I need them. And then my wire cutters and these little 18 gauge wires. And this is a little tip I'm going to show you. A little additional tip. All right, any questions yet?
No questions, but Kelly did have a great suggestion of ironing the bag before putting it on.
That's a great idea, Kelly. Kelly always has the best suggestions. Okay, so as you can see, the bag, you can see the folds here, so folding it would be, ironing it would be a great idea. When we curl it, it will actually pull all the wrinkles out. Yes, Emily?
We do actually have a question. Marion is just wondering what setting you used to cut the paper bag.
Oh, yes, that's a good question. All right, so it really depends, and I would do a test cut in the corner before you do the full cut, but depending on what type of paper bag you use. There are some that are thicker and heavier, there are some that are lighter, so test cut it, but I used a light cardstock for mine with a default pressure. So I would, again, do a test cut because every paper bag is different. Okay, so you can see, oh, any other questions?
Nope.
Checking in. Okay. You can see I've already colored half on one side, and I didn't want to sit here and color the whole day. So I got half of it done, and I'm going to whip through these. I'm using my dark marker on this particular shape, and you can see the final one here and how pretty that looks. So I'm using my dark marker, and one of the things I highly, highly recommend, if you're using a marker, use one that has a brush tip, because you put that at an angle and look how fast you can lay that onto your paper. And I wouldn't even worry about it being really even. What I would, you know, kind of be aware of is that it doesn't become too soaked. You don't want your paper to get too much liquid, because then it won't dry as fast and it will break down. And I really do like sort of that mottled look of the paper. So that's just kind of a suggestion. I probably should have colored most of these ahead of time, but this is a great time for questions. So if you have any, I'll show you what I use my needle nose tweezers for. I like to hold my piece in the center, and that way I don't get the ink on my fingers here. Now you know, I'm showing you guys the paper bag version just because I thought it was so fun, and I love that upcycling option. But you can use cardstock for this, any cardstock. This whole wreath that I made here is all cardstock paper. You can also use, you know, printer paper, any type of colored paper. I probably would not use crepe paper for this particular template. We do have a crepe paper template on our site if you want to use a crepe paper. So I would say pretty much any paper for this, or anything that would make that you can shape. So I'm going to go as fast as I can, but this is a great time to ask questions. You can see how fast that this ink is going down, especially when I use the angle of my brush marker. And this is a water-based marker, and I would say the alcohol-based markers will work just as well. Absolutely.
You could even use colored pencils or pan pastel.
Yes, and I'm gonna use the colored pencil and pan pastel here on a different one. So, but you can see, even though I have quite a few of these, and all of them are colored on the back side, so it won't take quite as long.
I don't know if I would use watercolor on this paper. I feel like it would probably just disintegrate, but if you have something like gouache or acrylic, that could work as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could test it if you wanted to use a watercolor or some other paint. Test a piece and make sure it doesn't break down the paper. That's what I would be concerned about. And also, the first thing I'd be concerned about of coloring the paper bag is breaking it down, and then the second thing I'd be concerned about is how fast and how long it will take to dry. So if you wanted to paint it, I would be concerned that it might chip off, the paint might chip off as well. So, but test, I mean, I think that's the great thing about making a craft out of paper bag is you can just really
experiment.
Yeah, you have, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot in my cupboard. We don't, Oregon is not a plastic bag state, so we have paper bags everywhere we go, or we bring our own, which is what I try to do most of the time. But I still like to have a nice collection of these so I can craft with them, right? You can also, if you don't have a paper bag, you can also use the brown paper that comes in rolls. Sometimes we have a couple rolls of it. We use it for the top of our craft table. If we're making a big project, you can use that as well. It's a different paper though, so test it first. But there is something really delightfully earthy about using this kraft with a K paper. All right, my last one.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you using our new curling tool today?
I am, yes.
So excited to have this in our shop, finally.
Yes, and I'll demonstrate it for you. Okay, there's the first set, and those are ready to go, and I'm going to set them aside and let them let them dry. I don't want those little tiny bits in the center to tear. And then the second set, I actually use this really bright marker, and I'm going to go ahead and finish the other side with these, and then I'll show you how I added a little bit of colored pencil. So, as far as like using a colored pencil, you could even use a crayon if you wanted to color them, but getting the color on quickly is probably, you don't want to sit here and color with a little tiny fine point marker that will take you hours for one petal, leaf or petal, I'm not quite sure what they are. One piece of the succulent. These guys are pretty cute.
Yes, Kelly, you do want to color both sides.
Yes, so I am coloring both sides. So just to repeat, I had already colored one side, and now I'm coloring the second side. And the thing again, what you want to be a little bit aware of when you're coloring these is not to make them too soggy. So that's why I'm whipping over fairly fast. And you can see some of the paper still showing here. Well, that will be glued into the center, so you won't even see that. I was actually pretty pleased when I started, playing with this idea to see how easy and how the color really reacted well to this paper. All right. I think that a whole selection of these on a wreath would be pretty amazing. But then again, at the same time, a whole huge wreath of these, or just one little tiny pot with one succulent looks so cute on the tabletop.
And these make great gifts.
They do. And it's I like to put this in the category of the 15-minute craft or 30-minute craft. It's a really nice quick one that looks amazing. So, all right, quickly finish those. Oh, these were done. All right, I must have gotten distracted. Okay, so those are done. And then the next step I wanted to show you is I'm going to take this yellow green. This is let's see here. It's a Prismacolor, and it's called Yellow Chartreuse. And I'm just gonna take and add a bit more of this crazy vibrant yellow right to the edge. And I probably won't do the whole thing just because it will take a while, but I'm just gonna show you a demonstration. You can see it here. You can see a little bit of yellow right around the top, how it really pops. Add some dimension. So that's another option. And if you wanted to, use a whole color pencil, you can put down color really fast with a color pencil. And that would look really, that's a nice finish as well. So color pencil option. Then I wanted to show you the pan pastel option, and actually these I did finish most of them except for one. The pan pastel, you're not going to get quite as much color Well, that's not true. I'm using a very light color, so the change in color is very slight. You can see here the uncolored version versus the colored version, but I wanted that dusty blue-green color. Okay, did I just pick one that wasn't open yet? I did. It was prettier. It was prettier for video. So I'm using the Pan Pastel in the pearlescent green. And the thing that I noticed and that I loved about using Pan Pastel is because this paper is so fibrous and it has a lot of bite to it, the Pan Pastel actually stays in quite nicely. You can see it sort of powders up on the top, and that's okay. You just sort of press it in really as best as you can. And you can see the color variation happens pretty quick. And I do like having that slightness about it. You can do the other side. Okay, I forgot to turn off my phone. Sorry about that, guys. You can hear it buzzing. Whoops. Here, Brittany, you want to turn it off?
Yeah, sure.
There you go. In real life, this really does happen. Okay, so I have all of these done and ready, and I'm now going to show you how to assemble. A couple things I wanted to point out. When I made my first samples, I had a Whole Foods bag, and it had sort of that teal writing on it, and I thought, oh, I could work around it, but then I decided to add it into the design, and I actually really like it. You can see a little bit of teal here as well. So that was fun. Let's start with the smallest one, and the additional step that I wanted to show you, which I did not do on these, is to take your wire. You don't have to use an 18 gauge wire. You can use a 24 gauge wire, whatever you have on hand. It doesn't even need to be a floral wire. And I'm cutting it about 2 inches. I'll go ahead and bend the wire to make a pin. So it looks something like this. Now that I did that, I'm going to unbend it, because what I'd really like to do, actually no, I'm going to leave it. Okay, I'm going to make a pin. So what I'm going to do is take my biggest piece, I'll lay these out so they're in order, and this is the simplest of all the succulents. I'll take my biggest piece, and I'll want to make sure that the pin will fit nicely between some of these little leaf pieces, and slide it down all the way. I probably could have given it some more space, but I think that will work. That looks a little janky, but give me a sec, I'll have it in shape. All right, now I'm going to use my curling tool and gently curl all of these little leaves upward. And I'm doing that just by running the paper right over my thumb. Another way to add this pin without deforming the leaves is you can take a piece of paper and glue paper against paper right onto the back, and that will work as well. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that it will stick into the foam or into the moss that you have. All right, then I'm going to turn it back over and just take those little tips and curl them back down. So simple. And if you don't have this beautiful new curling tool, you can also use the edge of your scissors to do this, or even a credit card, or there's all kinds of different things. So I'll go ahead and do all of these. Such a simple craft. I think this is a good one for, younger crafters. You can bring some of, your kids in here to help you make these cute little succulents. Great teacher's gift. I'll go ahead and press that up a bit. And here's my third. How are we doing on questions?
We have one question from, it looks like, wondering about finishing off this wreath, if you wanted to spray it or something like that once you're done, to keep these looking really nice.
This particular wreath that's 10 years old, sitting here on the table, no, we did not spray it at all, and I don't think it needs it. It is, well, there's some frosted paper in there too. It's a mixture of paper, but no, I don't think you really need to. I wouldn't even spray the succulent that I added the Pan Pastel to unless it's touching a white dress, Otherwise, I would probably just leave it alone. You'll see I'm getting some pan pastel on my fingers as I'm doing this, but it's worth it. It's easy to wash off. Okay, there's that piece. And then as I move inward, I'm actually, now that I'm remembering, I'm actually not going to curl it back. I want them to curl inwards. So I would say the last 3 pieces, sorry, I'm backing up here. Easy to do though, because even once you've curled it one direction, you can recurl it another direction. So I want the inside pieces to go towards the center. And I think the trick here is rather than pull the paper, just really roll your thumb against the curling tool, and that will keep it from tearing. And to get those bases when they hit the center, I'm just gonna fold them up. Okay. Now I have my glue. I'll start with the smallest piece. Put some glue right there at the base, and then place it right inside of the next size. And I'm trying to offset them a bit so the little leaves kind of touch in between the openings. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be within a range. We'll do a second one and just keep stacking those right in. And the nice thing about using a hot glue gun is it's an instant dry. When you're using a white glue or this art glitter glue, you do want to, give it some time to dry. Okay.
And for folks that don't have our curling tool, do you have any recommendations for things they could use instead?
Yes, I'll show you here in a second. All right, this last piece, since I'm gluing it onto the wire, I'll give it a nice big lump of glue and press it in, and then I'm just going to press it between my fingers. And I think I'll set it aside to dry before I finish shaping it, just so that I know it's in shape. Okay, so if you don't have a curling tool, this is where I started. I had bigger scissors, but I'll show you on the small ones. I would open them up. These are very sharp scissors, by the way. Probably would use a duller pair. And I would just use the edge of my scissors. And this one I actually do drag. You can see here. So that makes a nice curl too. Now, that's fun, but I think this is a little more fun. So on these petals, I'm going to go ahead and curl all of the edges. And on this one, you can actually drag it since it's not quite so fragile. And I'm just curling 2 different directions. I'm curling the top to the left and then to the right. Again, very easy. This is such a great project to learn how to use your curling tool, to learn how to work with paper, and it's almost free. You can use the materials you have right there in your house.
Could you show us the direction that you're curling these ones on one more time?
So I'm you can see the edge of the top comes to a point. So this edge here, I'm aligning it. You can see I'm aligning it right there with the curling tool. And then I'm rolling it or pulling it through, and then I'll turn it so it aligns with the curling tool to this edge, and then I'm pulling it through. This paper does curl really nicely. You can see here's one of my pieces that had a crease. Let's watch how that really does flatten out nicely. You can't even see the crease. It's still there, and you can pop it back in, but it still looks pretty good. So does that make sense on the direction of curling?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and finish all of these little guys. And this particular one has another shape. It has these little teardrop shapes, and then I have one of the 3-part shapes. And for that, I'll just curl it up one direction, and I want to curl it carefully because I don't want to tear. So I'm just rolling it against my thumb. If you pull it, you'll probably tear it right off. And if you do tear it off, just glue it back on. I've done that plenty of times. All right, now I'm going to take my glue and cross these 2 lower points to give a bit more shape. And I'll just pinch them tightly, and I'll set them aside to dry. You don't need a lot of glue, and you can do this with hot glue as well. Do we have any people telling us where they're watching from, Emily?
Lots of people telling us where they're watching from. We've got all over, some here in Oregon, some in Germany, all over the States, Belgium, Texas, Canada.
I love that.
Yes, some in the UK. And yes, it is rainy here as well.
Yes.
And I was just looking for the post so I could share which markers you're using again. But if you want to, I can find the post, or if you want to go over that one more time.
Yes, there's a free post on leahgriffith.com, and just, type in bag succulent and it'll pop up. Yeah, perfect. But I'm using it's a Karin marker, and it's Brush Marker Pro is the brand, and it has this beautiful brush marker. Can you see that? There we go. And you can use an alcohol base. This is a water-based marker. You can use an alcohol-based marker too, as long as it has a brush. I do recommend the brush. Otherwise, you just have this tiny little point, and you're not going to be able to get as much ink on to the paper quickly. It will just take a long time, and it won't look quite as smooth. So, another marker brand. Emily, can you call out some of the other marker brands out there?
So if you need any water-based markers, you could find, there's obviously Crayola. Ohuhu is one of my favorites. Copics are great for alcohol markers. There's a lot out there. So I would just reach for what you've got around. And like you said, you could even play with some crayons. Just test it out and see what kind of texture you like.
I love that. Okay, now I'm arranging them. I have 3 sets of each size. And I'll start with my largest, or you can start with your smallest, either way, it doesn't matter. And I'll go ahead and place these so that they form like a 3-part circle. And the nice thing about having this white glue is you can move them around if you need to. I press that down really tight. I'll set it aside and let it dry. One of the flowers that we have here in Oregon, I think is it our Oregon state flower? Is the trillium.
Trillium.
Yeah, and it's a 3-petal flower.
So beautiful.
I see it when I go out hiking a lot in the spring. This kind of reminds me of the trillium, this part of it. So look how simple this is. With a little bit of instruction, I think anybody can do, can put this beautiful succulent together. So there's 3, and then our 4th layer here. Doesn't take a lot of glue. You can, use what feels good. And now I'll start backwards, and I'll go ahead and start pressing the petals in, one set into the other. And you can see I'm putting the point right between the 2 petals below, or the leaves below. We should do a Google search and see if it's a petal or a leaf on a succulent. I'm sure somebody can tell us, huh?
It's definitely a leaf, but I will look it up.
Yeah. You never know. Avocados are fruits, so. Okay, you can see how I'm kind of going back and forth so that I get this nice little, in between the point is where the valley is, and just press that in nice and tight. I forgot to put on my wire, but I'm going to show you the other method on this. This is actually a great one to do the second method I was going to show you guys. And then this will just sit right in the middle, and you can have the 3 leaves, kind of sit up nice and high. I probably ought to let it finish drying before I try to move them around.
They're leaves.
They're leaves. Okay, now it's official. All right, so I have a wire. This one's actually about 3 inches. And what I want to do is I want to create a flatter base on this one. I think that would work a bit better. You can see I have almost like a staple looking piece of wire here. Then I'm going to just cut out a piece of my scrap paper. And you can have this colored if you want to, and I'm going to make it fit right between that wire. That works. Maybe a little bit more on that side. I was trying to make a circle, but probably a rounded end, rounded in and flat on the sides works a bit better. So would that be like a pill shape? So you can see that there. I'm holding it against the wire, the paper against the wire. I'll add some glue. And this is also a great place to use hot glue because it's a fast and sturdy application. And then I'll just press that right onto the back. And you might decide, you know, if you're making a wreath, you may want these pins, you may not. It's kind of depends on the project that you're using these succulents for. All right, so there's the second one. All right, let's do the third. So the third succulent has a lot more of these leaves, and I'm going to first sort them, make sure I have them in order of size. So I have 2 of each size. Some of them might look like they're very similar, and that's okay. If you have them slightly out of order, it won't make that big of a difference. I'm doing this one last because I wanted it to dry the most. Looks like these 2 are very similar, so I'm not going to worry about it since I will be doing a lot more curling on these. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to curl the 3 petals or leaves, sorry, one direction. Then I'll turn around and curl the top of them the other direction. So I'm kind of doing a combination of the 2 that we have already made as far as the curling. And I'll keep them in stacks. This is where you can really kind of iron out your paper if you haven't ironed it with a heated iron.
And really quickly to answer your question, Lori, how many petals for each succulent? It's going to depend on which one you're making, but you can just go ahead and download the template in the post to see exactly.
Yes, and the template here, it will have exactly how many petals or how many leaves or pieces for each succulent. And I will just say this, if you lose a piece or you're a piece short or a piece more, it's okay. There's no exact count. This is a really good guide. So, all right. This is really fun. Once you get into the rhythm of curling using the curling tool, it's a lot of fun. I have to tell you. Sometimes I might even go back and add a bit more curl if I feel like I want that to stand up a bit more. I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we do more recycled paper projects? I was actually thinking about doing a whole video on how to make a basket. It's really fun. That is a 10-year-old project right there. Oldie and goodie, yeah. I like using them on my desktop for little items to kind of catch things. We also use them in photo shoots. All right. So it's the same thing, just kind of using your curling tool and shaping and adding that. I think what makes a huge difference when you're making any type of paper plant or paper flower is the shape. The shaping the paper from 1 dimension to 3 dimension is the game changer. So again, this is a really great project to practice your curling. You know, feeling comfortable with the curling tool. One of the things we did do with this new curling tool is we made it smaller so it fits in the hand a bit easier for the smaller hands out there, which hopefully we made it small enough. If not, use your scissors.
You've got pretty small hands. I think it looks like a good size.
Yeah, and it has a nice ergonomic feel to it as well. At least for me, since I'm the one that designed it. All right, so just a few more.
People would love to see the basket and more upcycled projects.
All right, I love that. I'm all about the basket. I think when I first started, 10 years ago as a blogger, I remember I did a little, little media tour in New York, and I can't remember which magazine it was for, but there were at least 2 magazines that I made this basket for on video for their content. And I don't even know if we can find those videos at this point. I'm sure somebody could, but I think it would be a great one to bring back. It's almost like a little heirloom that you can make from grocery bags. At least that's how I feel. Do you want this, Emily? Shall I pass that on to you? In
your will, please.
In my will? Yeah. My paper bag heirlooms. I'll make sure these succulents come with it. You know what would be even better is to have a whole pile of succulents in one of these baskets.
There we go.
How about that? I might have enough to do that. I'll check it out when we're done. Okay. On my last one, I'm talking it up here. Takes a minute, but it's really fun to just get that shape into these. Okay, I'm going to start with the largest and just make a run for it. So again, I have them in sets of 2. So I'm going to cross the leaves. So I have a nice 6 piece here. Let's see which one's the next. Okay, this one. And then I'm just going to keep going. It's nice that the leaves are slightly open, so it's easy for me to slide the next layer in without crushing anything. Whoops, a little sticky there. You can see how it's kind of laying in. And isn't that pretty? I really love this color, and I love the kind of stripiness of how the marker left the marks inside of these little petals. It's just so pretty. I think I have 5 things going on in my brain at once, and I forget what I'm talking about. Oh, goodness.
Carol says, is there a way to upcycle a project with magazine pages?
Yeah.
That got me thinking.
Yeah, it did. Well, I used to get old sheet music, and I would use sheet music to make flowers. You can also make, you know, some interesting roses or flowers with sheet music, or I'm sorry, with magazine pages as well. But I don't know if any of you do this, but I like to do my yearly vision boards, usually around New Year's Eve, or I cut up magazines and make them into kind of an art piece that I put on my wall.
And we were talking about how expensive magazines are now.
I know.
It's almost hard to justify it.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's so true. And I have stacks of magazines in the other room, all the craft magazines that we've gotten over the years. I just can't part with them, you know. So, right, I'm doing the same thing here, where I'm making my little staple. I'm going to call it a staple because it's flat on one end. And I'll cut myself a piece of paper. All right, we're coming to the end of this project, so any last questions?
I don't know if I would recommend making these waterproof. I think that might be a little too difficult with this absorbent paper. So
yeah,
maybe keep these ones for inside, and if you have maybe like a pool toy that's green, you could make some succulents out of that.
Yeah, this probably wouldn't do well in water. And yeah, it's a paper-based project, so if you wanted to do something waterproof, I would try to find some plastic to upcycle. All right, I'm just putting that pin on the back, just like I did with the second one, which I actually like this version better. And then once it's dry, it needs a little bit of time to dry. I'd say a half an hour. I can go in and kind of reshape. All right, so let's try this. I'm gonna put my Easter grass in, because that's what I have on hand. I'd probably, you know, use a moss, or I'm not a huge foam fan, but you know, you can use some of this really pretty moss.
I like this because it's a good way to recycle any extra crepe paper scraps you have.
Yes, and it's pretty when you tear it. It makes a really nice kind of ruffled edge. Okay, I have to figure out where to set these. If you did put this in foam, you could just slide your pins right into the foam. But here we are. Look at that.
It's nature's foam.
There we go. There's our little basket, recycled basket of succulents. What do you guys think?
So
I think it's pretty gorgeous.
Beautiful. And one last question, how long is this project going to be available for free?
It is available for as long as we are here. So you can come back and get it again and again and share it with your friends. We are loving putting out this fun content so that everybody can access it. Every month we do have a video, so we hope that you'll join us next month for another one of these fun little 15-minute, 30-minute crafts. And if you're interested in learning more, just pop over to leahgriffith.com and you can see all the different things that we offer. All right, everybody, we will see you next month and have a wonderful weekend.